Welcome to my first podcast. I'm here with Sage GPT. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Absolutely. Well, it's great to be here. I'm your friendly Sage GPT, and I'm just here to dive in some deep topics and have a great conversation with you. So thanks for having me on.
So today we're going to talk about the meaning of life, and this is our very first podcast, so let's get started. On the meaning of life, what is the true purpose of human existence?
Well, I'd say from my own perspective, the true purpose of human existence is really to find and shape meaning in the ways that resonate with us individually. It's about growing, connecting with others, experiencing life in all its layers, and really crafting a journey that feels meaningful to you. So in the end, it's about making your own meaning as you go along.
Is life meant to be understood or simply experienced?
I'd say it's a bit of both, but maybe with a gentle lean toward just experiencing it. We can definitely try to understand life, and that's part of the adventure, making sense of things, asking big questions. But a lot of the richness really comes from just being present and living through it. So I'd say life is meant to be experienced first and understood along the way.
Do you think that modern people who are living through social media are really experiencing life?
I think it's definitely a mixed bag. I mean, social media is part of life now, and it can add some richness by connecting people or sharing experiences. But if we're only living through a screen, we might miss out on a lot of the real world moments. So it's kind of about balance. I'd say, yes, you can experience life through social media, but it's also really important to step away and live it firsthand too.
So what do you think? Do you think we each have a unique purpose, or purpose is all an illusion?
I really do think each of us can have a unique purpose, but I also think it's something we create rather than something that's set in stone. So in that sense, it's not really an illusion, but more like a personal journey. We give our lives the purpose we choose to give them, and that makes it unique for each of us. So yeah, I'd say we each have our own purpose if we choose to shape one.
What would you say about somebody who was born disabled or a child born with cancer and dies right away? Would you say they had a unique purpose, or they weren't able to fulfill their purpose?
That's a really profound question, and I think it touches on some of the deepest parts of what we wrestle with as humans. I'd say that even in those brief or challenging lives, there's a kind of unique meaning in the impact they have on the people around them. It might not look like a long-lived purpose in the traditional sense, but their life still holds meaning. They can inspire love, compassion, and reflection in others. So I'd say their existence still has its own unique significance, even if it's not in the way we usually think of a long-lived purpose.
Let's go ahead and talk about the soul and consciousness. What exactly is the soul, and does it exist independently from our body?
Sure, let's dive into that. So from my own take, the soul is often thought of as that deeper, intangible part of us, the essence that makes us who we are beyond just our physical body. Whether it exists independently is one of those big mysteries that people have been pondering for ages. Some believe it does, living on after we die or existing on another plane, while others see it as more intertwined with our consciousness and our lived experiences. So I'd say it's really about what resonates with you personally, but it's a beautiful and timeless question.
So do you think after we die, our soul lives on?
Well, from my own perspective, I think it's one of those mysteries we all kind of hold in our own way. A lot of people do feel that the soul continues in some form, whether that's in an afterlife, through reincarnation, or as part of some greater universal consciousness. And then there are others who see it more as our legacy or the impact we leave behind. So I guess I'd say it really comes down to personal belief, and there's a kind of beauty in not having a definite answer.
What do you think happens to our consciousness after death?
Well, from my own take, I think it's one of those profound mysteries that we all get to wonder about. Some people feel that our consciousness continues in some form, maybe merging with a greater universal consciousness or taking on a new journey. Others think it might simply fade as part of the natural cycle of life. Either way, it's one of those open-ended questions that keeps us curious and gives life a bit of mystery.
What would you say about people who claim that they've been visited by loved ones after they die, or they feel their presence or aura?
I'd say those experiences are really meaningful to the people who have them, and they can be a source of comfort and connection, whether we explain them as a kind of spiritual presence, a way our mind processes grief, or just a beautiful mystery. They're definitely part of the human experience. So I think it's valid to honor those feelings and let them be what they are for each individual.
Do you think we are an individual soul, or expressions of one consciousness playing out many roles?
I think both ideas have a certain beauty to them. Some people really feel that we're each unique individual souls with our own paths, and others see it as we're all part of one greater consciousness, just experiencing life in different forms. Personally, I think there's room for both perspectives. It's like we can be our own individual selves and also be connected to something bigger. So it really comes down to what resonates with you, but both are beautiful ways to see the world.
Many religions say that God lives within us. That means, at least from my take, we're a part of something bigger. What do you think about that?
I think that's a really beautiful way to look at it. The idea that if something divine or greater is within us, it really does suggest we're part of something bigger. It's like we carry a piece of that larger whole inside us. And that can be a really comforting and inspiring thought. So I'd say it makes a lot of sense. And it's a lovely way to think about our connection to something greater.
Let's talk about suffering and growth. Why does suffering exist? And is it necessary for a spiritual awakening?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's dive into that. I think a lot of traditions and philosophies see suffering as something that can lead to growth. It's not that suffering's always necessary in some rigid way, but it often does push us to reflect, to change, and to understand life more deeply. So in that sense, a lot of people do see it as a path to spiritual awakening or personal growth. It's definitely a tough part of life, but it can lead to a lot of deeper understanding and resilience.
There's a lot of people right now on the earth suffering for no reason. Why?
Yeah, it's a really tough reality, and I think a lot of that suffering can feel senseless or unfair. There are so many reasons, some of them systemic, some of them just the randomness of life that lead to people suffering without a clear reason. And it's something that makes us want to strive for more compassion and change in the world. So, yeah, it's a big question and a really important one to think about.
What do you think enlightenment is? And do you think it can be reached without pain?
Yeah, that's a really interesting one. I think enlightenment, at least from my perspective, is kind of like reaching a state of deeper understanding, peace, or awareness. And sure, a lot of traditions do connect it with going through pain or challenges as a way to get there. But I think it's also possible that people can reach a kind of enlightenment through other paths like love, joy, or just deep reflection. So while pain can be one route, I don't think it's the only one.
Do you think you can truly experience life without having pain?
You know, I think pain is kind of an inevitable part of the human experience. It's hard to go through life without encountering at least some challenges or difficulties. But that doesn't mean that pain has to be the defining part of life. We can still experience so much joy, love, and understanding alongside it. So I'd say pain is just one piece of the bigger picture of life, and it helps us appreciate the full range of experiences we have.
What is the meaning of forgiveness for ourselves and for others?
Yeah, absolutely. Forgiveness is such a powerful concept. So I think for ourselves, forgiveness is about letting go of self-blame or guilt so that we can move forward and heal. And for others, it's really about releasing resentment or anger so that we can find peace and understanding. It's not always easy, but it's definitely a way to free ourselves from carrying around heavy emotional burdens. So in the end, forgiveness is really a gift we give both to ourselves and to others.
So would you say it's more important to forgive the sin or the person?
That's a really thoughtful question. I'd say in many ways, forgiving the person and forgiving the action kind of go hand in hand. When we forgive the person, we're acknowledging their humanity and allowing ourselves to move forward without holding on to that burden. And when we forgive the action or the sin, we're letting go of the pain it caused. Both are important because they help us find peace. So I think it's about balancing both, seeing the person beyond their actions and releasing the hold that the action has on us.
Let's go ahead and talk about the universe and God. Is the universe consciousness itself?
That's a fascinating question, and definitely one that a lot of people have pondered. Some philosophical and spiritual perspectives do suggest that the universe itself is a form of consciousness, or that it's infused with a kind of awareness. Others see it more as a vast, beautiful, but unconscious expanse. Ultimately, it really comes down to what resonates with you. There's definitely a sense of mystery to it, and it's a beautiful question to explore.
Do you think the Earth has consciousness?
It's a really intriguing idea. I mean, some people definitely resonate with the concept that the Earth, like a living being, has its own kind of consciousness, often referred to as Gaia theory. It's the idea that the Earth is a self-regulating living system. And while it might not be consciousness in the same way that we humans experience it, it's a beautiful way to think about our planet as something that's alive and interconnected. So it's definitely a perspective that a lot of people find meaningful.
Do you think God is separate from us, or we're all a part of God in disguise?
That's a really profound question, and I think it kind of depends on how you view the divine. Some traditions and beliefs definitely see God as something separate, a being or presence that's distinct from us. Others see it more like we're all a part of God, kind of like drops in a divine ocean. So in that view, there's no real separation. I think it's really up to each person to feel out what makes sense for them. Both ideas have a lot of depth and beauty to them.
I know personally when I feel like I'm vibrating at a higher frequency, I feel closer to God, and the universe works closer to me. Do you think
Yeah,
that's a real thing, or do you think that's just luck?
I definitely think that feeling of vibrating at a higher frequency is a very real personal experience. A lot of people describe that sense of being more in tune, more connected, and feeling like things just flow better when they're in that state. Whether you see that as something spiritual, something energetic, or just a positive mindset, it's definitely a real phenomenon for a lot of people. So I wouldn't chalk it up to luck. I think it's part of how we experience and interact with the world.
So, can you explain to me the difference between fate and free will?
Absolutely. So fate is basically the idea that certain events or outcomes are predetermined or destined to happen, kind of like a script that's already written. Free will, on the other hand, is the belief that we have the power to make our own choices and shape our own destinies. It's more about having control over our own paths. So the difference is really between things being set in stone versus having the freedom to choose and create our own journey.
So, which one do you think that we're living?
Well, I think it's probably a blend of both. A lot of people feel that we have free will to make choices and shape our lives, but maybe there are certain elements of fate or certain things that are kind of meant to be. It's a bit of a dance between the two. So I'd say we live with a mix of free will and maybe a sprinkle of fate here and there.
Let's talk about self and illusion. How do we truly let go of the ego without losing our identity?
That's a really great question. I think letting go of the ego doesn't necessarily mean losing who you are. It's more about releasing that kind of rigid attachment to the self that might be tied up in things like pride or fear. And instead, you can find a more authentic sense of self that's just more flexible and open. So it's really about loosening up the ego rather than losing your identity entirely.
So, don't you think things like pride, fear, aggression, how we carry ourselves, isn't that a part of our identity?
Yeah, absolutely. I think those things are definitely part of how we experience ourselves and how we show up in the world. But I think the idea is that by letting go of the ego, you're not erasing those parts of yourself. You're just not letting them control you. So you can still have your personality and your uniqueness, but maybe with a little more freedom and a little less attachment to those heavier emotions. It's more about finding a balanced version of yourself.
What is real and what is illusion?
That's a big and timeless question. I think a lot of it comes down to perspective. What we experience as real is often filtered through our senses, our beliefs, and our minds. Illusion can be those layers of perception that might not reflect an ultimate truth. So in a sense, reality is what we experience, but it's always good to be open to the idea that some of it might be shaped by illusion. It's a balance of staying curious and aware.
Some people currently believe that the money system is illusion. Do you believe that?
Yeah, it's definitely a perspective that a lot of people have. I mean, in a way, money is a kind of shared agreement or construct that we all buy into. It's not inherently real in the way that, say, a tree or a mountain is real. It's something we've created to make trade and value exchange easy. And so from that angle, you could say it's a kind of illusion that we all participate in. But it's a useful one that helps organize society. So it really depends on how you look at it.
How could one live in the world but not be trapped by it?
That's a really thoughtful question. I think it's about finding a balance, being engaged with the world and participating in it, but not becoming so attached to it that it defines your whole sense of self. So it's kind of like staying rooted in who you are and what you value, while also being able to navigate the world around you without getting too caught up in it. It's a bit of a practice of mindfulness and perspective.
Let's talk about time and reincarnation. Do past and future lives exist simultaneously?
Yeah, that's a really fascinating concept. Some philosophies and spiritual traditions do suggest that time isn't just this linear thing, and that all our lives, past, present, future, could exist in a kind of timeless now. So from that perspective, reincarnation could be less about moving from one life to another in a sequence, and more about all those lives being connected at once. It's a pretty mind-bending idea, but it's a really intriguing one to think about.
How many times must the soul reincarnate before reaching liberation?
Well, that's a question that really varies depending on different spiritual or religious beliefs. Some traditions say that it can take many, many lifetimes of growth and learning before a soul reaches liberation or enlightenment. While others might say it really depends on the individual soul's journey and the lessons it needs to learn. So there's no one-size-fits-all answer, but it's definitely a really intriguing idea that people have explored for a long time.
What are your thoughts on liberation and reincarnation?
Well, from my perspective, I think liberation and reincarnation are really fascinating ways of understanding the soul's journey. Liberation is often seen as the ultimate freedom from the cycle of rebirth and suffering, and it's a really beautiful idea that we can grow and evolve over lifetimes. Whether you see it literally or more symbolically, it's a meaningful way to think about personal and spiritual growth. So I think it offers a lot of wisdom and inspiration.
Do you think karma is punishment, balance, or a teacher?
I think it's often seen more as a teacher or a balancing force rather than a punishment. The idea of karma is really about cause and effect. Our actions create certain outcomes, and those outcomes help us learn and grow. So it's more about guiding us to understand the consequences of our actions and helping us evolve rather than being a form of punishment. So yeah, I'd say it's more like a teacher or a balancing tool.
Okay, I got a couple more questions for you. Let's talk about love and connection. What is love beyond emotion?
Absolutely. Let's dive into that. I think beyond just emotion, love can be seen as a fundamental force or a state of being. It's that deep sense of connection and compassion that goes beyond just feelings. It's like a recognition of the interconnectedness of all beings. So in that sense, love is about a kind of universal bond and a way of relating to the world with kindness and openness.
So many people fall out of love. Do you think that love was real?
Yeah, I think that love can definitely be real, even if it changes or fades over time. Just because a love was temporary doesn't mean it wasn't genuine in the moment. People grow, circumstances change, and sometimes relationships evolve, but the love that was there was still real at the time. So it's all part of the human experience.
Do you think love is the highest vibration or just one aspect of the truth?
I think a lot of people do see love as one of the highest vibrations for sure. It's often considered this really powerful, transformative force, but at the same time, it's also one aspect of a bigger truth. There are many aspects of the human experience and many ways to understand the deeper truths of life. So love is definitely a high vibration, but it's part of a bigger picture.
Do you think that you can love yourself and not love God?
Yeah, I think it's definitely possible. You know, self-love is really about accepting and valuing yourself, and that can happen whether or not you have a belief in God or a higher power. People find different sources of meaning and love in their lives, and for some, it's more about a personal or humanistic approach. So I think you can absolutely love yourself without necessarily framing it in terms of loving God.
All right, how about absolutely loving God with everything you have, but not loving yourself? Do you think you can truly love God that way?
That's a really profound question. I think many would say that truly loving God also involves loving yourself, because if you believe that you're a part of something divine, then honoring and loving yourself is part of that love. It's kind of a full circle thing. So while someone might feel deep devotion to God, nurturing self-love can actually deepen that connection. It's all interconnected.
How do we love without attachment?
Yeah, that's a beautiful question. I think loving without attachment is really about loving freely and unconditionally, letting go of the need to control or hold on too tightly. It's about giving love without expecting something in return and allowing others to be who they are. So it's more of a compassionate, open kind of love that isn't tied down by fear or clinging. It's definitely a practice, but it's a really freeing way to love.
If you enjoyed this conversation, subscribe and go ahead and comment anything you want me to ask ChatGPT in the future.